We ended fiscal year, and we'll show this on the screen in a minute as well, but we ended fiscal year '24 with $28.7 million in our 6 trusts. And as approved during the budget process, we will utilize $1.2 million to support our revenues. That was approved by the board. In addition, the Board of School Committee approved using the Teaching and Learning Trust for our curriculum. And as I mentioned before, we also believe, and we won't know this until the year is over, but that we will need about $1 million for health insurance and $1 million for special education. So that would bring the trust fund balance down to $24 million prior to any interest. So now we're going to show a slide up on the screen here, just looking at the past couple of years, as well as where we think we'll be with the expendable trusts in next year. And it's a little bit small, so maybe we can enlarge it and scroll to the top here. Yeah. So basically, we have 6 expendable trusts that are listed on the left-hand side. Our healthcare, special education, maintenance and repairs, capital projects, athletics, and our latest is the Teaching and Learning Trust, which was approved several years ago. We're showing the balances as of fiscal year '23, so this would be the year ended June 30th of '23. We were at $31.279 million. That's the highest the trusts ever have been, so that's why I kind of started with this year. The interest that we earned that year was $1.2 million. During the budget process for fiscal year '24, we utilized $3 million as a revenue that was approved during the budget process when the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved our budget. And then throughout the year, we have our pluses and our minuses, different things that are happening. Our health insurance actually went over by $1,037,000, but we did not need to take the entire $1,037,000 because we had some other line items that had money that covered a portion of it. So we only had to take out of the trust $870 of that $1,037,000. Keep in mind, in that year, fiscal year '24, we also utilized $7.8 million of the fiscal year '23 fund balance. So I guess my point here is that we utilized the highlighted yellow areas. The $3 million, which we utilized as revenues, the $845,000, which was the transfer from the expendable trusts, and then the $7.8 million is actually used in the next year. We needed to maintain a $7.8 million fund balance because during the budget process, we were planning on using that in the next fiscal year. So if you were to look at fiscal year '24, we started out with the $31.2 million, and by the end of the year, we were at $28.6 million. Keep in mind that for the fiscal year '24 budget, we utilized $3.8 million of one-time funds. Now going on to the next year, so this would be looking at the blue highlighted line there, which is what we estimate happening for fiscal year '25. So again, starting out with our fiscal year '24 balance in the 6 trusts, we're at $28.6 million to start the year. I'm estimating interest here at 80% of what we received last year. I don't have any indication that it'll be more or less than that. So for now, I'm just putting $1 million in there. During the budget process for the year we're now, fiscal year '25, the board approved, as well as the aldermen, utilizing $1.2 million as a revenue. And then, as I just reported on our expenditure side, the board approved using $1.4 million out of the Teaching and Learning Trust for the curriculum, and then we believe we'll need the $1 million out of the healthcare and the $1 million out of special education. So those 2 highlighted line items, $1.2 million transfer to revenue, $3.4 million transfer to cover the overages. In addition to the $7.8 million from the fiscal year '24 surplus, means that in fiscal year '25, we're actually using one-time funds of $12.4 million. So looking at the first year that we went over, we utilized funds of $3.8 million. The year we're in now, we're utilizing one-time funds of $12.4 million. So now going down to what we expect to happen for next year. If we start out with our fiscal year '25 estimated balance of $25 million in the trusts, I have no idea with interest. I just put a 50% of the prior years, which would bring us in $500,000. We recommended $4.5 million to be utilized as revenues in fiscal year '26. And then what's on the table right now that the board is discussing, that we'll talk about more on Monday night, is how much extra will we use of our expendable trusts. The recommendation is the $3,843,000 to balance, to help us balance the $8 million reduction in our budget request, as well as the $1.5 million for curriculum and technology. So looking at the one-time funds we would utilize in next year, based on the latest information that's on the table, it would be $4.5 million in revenue, $5.3 million in other transfers, so a total of $9.8 million. So in summary here, just looking at the past 3 years, I just kind of wanted to point out a couple of things. If you scroll to the top, Nicole, please. 3 years ago, at June 30th of 23, we were at $31.2 million. Scroll to the bottom, June 30th of 26, which would be 3 years later, we would be at 15.7. So in a 3-year span, we've basically utilized half of our trusts. Looking at the one-time funds that we're projecting to use in fiscal year 26, that's $9.8 million, with only $15.7 million left in the trust at the end of next year. $9.8 million is just not sustainable. We'll be depleting these funds, and that's not the purpose of them. So again, just wanted to bring this information forward. I know there's a lot of discussion, regarding the budget and, how do our trusts work and how much money do we have in them, how much will we have left. Really, there's a couple of unknowns here as far as, the interest rates, how much we'll receive in interest, and then even at the end of this year, how much we will utilize. I mean, if our health insurance continues to rise, it could be a higher number. If we do better these next couple of weeks, it could be a lower number. We talked about with Tom DeLacy earlier, some indicators that can maybe help next year's expendable trust, so healthcare, so that we don't have to use any more in next year's budget. So that's just kind of a summary of where we've been the past 3 years. There's one other slide I just wanted to show. This is a history of our trust funds since we started them back in 2004. We started them with $175,000. You can see how, it increased the next year a little bit, and then, we were into the 2 million and then 3 million number. If you look at 2010, we were at 4.8 million, 2011, 8 million, then we started to drop. Right before COVID hit, 2019, we were at 1.5 million. And then you could start to see it increasing in 2020. That was the first COVID year, and then we had some remote learning. We saved some costs there, as well as the ESSER funds came into the district, so we were able to utilize them for some of our costs. So our highest is what we just looked at, which was fiscal year 23 at 31.2 million, and estimated for the end of next year, we would be at 15.7. So 15.7 is still a lot better than we've been most of our years pre-COVID. But my concern is just that we need to, when we're starting to look at the fiscal year 27 budget, we can't continue to take one-time funds.
So just a general comment, this is probably going to be the beginning of one of the most important discussions this board has had in a very long time. The city, I think, has 12 or $13 million in their rainy day fund.
In the rainy day fund, but then they also have other reserves, such as healthcare trust. And I think all of their reserves together are somewhere around the $30 million number.
About what's the number?
About $30 million.
Yeah. And I had been told they would not even consider tapping those funds. Wouldn't even consider it. And yet we are being forced to use this money against the recommendation of our auditor. It's not sound fiscal policy at all. I never remember the time when I was mayor that we ever talked about using the rainy day fund. I was surprised when I rejoined this board that we had become so dependent as the years went on those funds. So this is, in my view, and I said it this the other meeting, I'll probably reiterate it again on Monday night. In 2 years, those funds will be gone. And the only way we're going to make up that money, and I don't want to scare people because I don't recommend any of this, sort of like Commissioner O'Connell the other night. You don't mean massive layoffs. It's got to be personnel to make up that kind of a gap. When you go into the next budget with, we got a $9 million hole?
Yes.
You got a $9 million hole going into the next budget. We shouldn't even be doing what we're doing this year, but we were forced into it by the reality of the budget and the process, which I think was flawed. It was a flawed process, in my view. We should have had a joint meeting of both boards to be able to respond in time to the accusations that were made at their Tuesday meeting. I didn't think they were going to adopt the final budget that night. I think that surprised everyone. We all thought we had more time for discussion, and there was a false premise that we had to get that number. We were going to proceed with our hiring process no matter what. But having said that, it didn't happen. And I still have not watched the meeting. I've heard summaries of it. When people are attacking, I understand it, the integrity of our finance people and our data. We are as transparent, if more transparent, than the city. And just a reminder, when we talk about personnel, almost every department in the city side of government has a business person, a finance person in their department. We have Karen and support staff. That's it. They have more people in human resources than we do, and we have twice as many employees. I've never heard them talk about eliminating HR people because, as we know, that world is more complex than it ever was today. And the public needs to know, and that's why I'm repeating it again, sort of like the preacher every Sunday gives you sort of basic things. We are subsidizing the city budget this year because of the money that was cut from what we demonstrated we needed to sustain the progress that's being made in this district. And I find it so ironic that they might bring up, we're not doing a good enough job educating our kids. That's been said for generations, by the way, those comments. We're doing a pretty darn good job with the challenges that we're facing in this school district. And I think most people in the general public understand it. We have the most diverse population in the entire state of New Hampshire. We have special education costs. And anybody out there that's listening that has a student with special needs, they want services for their kids. And who wouldn't? Who wouldn't being put in that kind of a situation? And obviously, as a high school principal, I sat through many IEP meetings where parents were begging for services to address the needs of their students. The other part of it is come to, and again, I'm repeating, but it needs to be repeated so people understand it. We have to send students out of district because we can't meet their needs in our district. And when you have a student with that, just a ballpark, what is an estimate when we have to send a student out of district for services?
Sure, so that depends on the needs, but it could be
Give
over.
me an example.
It could be over $100,000.
Could be over $100,000
For one child, right.
for one student. And we have no control over that. No control. It's sort of when I was mayor and people would look at the welfare budget and they'd be arguing over the welfare budget, and I said, put the number 0 in there so you can look good with your tax rate. The bottom line is, whatever it costs us to provide welfare, we are under legal obligation to provide it. So if you don't put it in the budget, it's going to come out of reserves, or you're going to have to tap your rainy day fund. It's sort of the same situation that we're being put in here with special education costs. The other thing is the school district has taken on a big new department. Well, 2 in the recent years. The nurses, who used to be part of the health department all the time that I was mayor and a high school principal. And by the way, in 1980, I had 2,000 students in my school and a part-time nurse. So we've come a long way in meeting the needs of our students. We have to meet the needs. If you have a student that has a serious illness, especially with allergies, I have grandchildren that carry EpiPens around, you need a nurse on site. And we're struggling to do that, and we have some strategies to address this. So my frustration is this, that we have to prepare for next year, and we have to start preparing now. And we have to look at every possible alternative, because we can't go into, I don't see how we can go into that again. And the board probably will, to some extent. I hope they don't, but we may be forced into it again. We need to look at reduction in personnel. That's where the meat is on the bone, is in personnel. Personnel is what percentage of our budget?
70%.
Okay, so 70% of your budget is personnel. We also have a lot of school buildings. Now, we've been criticized for, building a new school. That school needed to be replaced. By the way, the students who live in that section of the city don't even have a swimming pool anymore. A lot of people don't realize it. The Hunt Pool. The most needy kids in our school that don't have the luxury of a parent bringing them up to Livingston or Rock Rimmon. No, Rock Rimmon, it's not the pool anymore, but the Rocco Theater pool. They don't do it. And they've been several years without even a swimming pool. Those students, again, almost every student that goes to Beach Street is on free and reduced lunch. And they come from all over the world. Some of them not even able to speak a word of English. And we usher them into that school, take them in very subpar learning and teaching conditions. We're bringing that plus to the inner city in a school that perhaps never should have been built when it was built. It was built on a false concept of how we educate kids, but it was done 50 years ago. So we're dealing with a situation to address the needs of the most needy kids in our city who are not making a cliche about this, come here in search of the American dream like our forefathers did. From different countries, mine came from England and Ireland, but they faced the same situation. They didn't face, obviously, some of the language barriers, although the Irish language still, the accent still throws me. So we need to start thinking big. And I'm not asking for a vote on this, but we need to start getting some costs here. It has come up at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. What school are they going to close? Okay, in the report that we received, they recommended perhaps closing MST. That's in the report, am I correct? Now, closing MST has some ramifications because the funding for those programs come from the state. Building the school, renovating the school. Again, I was on the school board when it was built. And that was a major step forward for our city to have the Manchester School of Technology. I have personal experience with it with my grandson who's graduating this year, by the way, at 8 o'clock in the morning. And he's had a wonderful experience at the MST High School. So the question is, do we need another high school there? The other question that comes in mind, I know Dr. Goldhart was floating some ideas of building a bigger school, closing Weston Central. There's so much politics involved in that, but we need to get costs on that. What would be the cost of closing MST? And what are the ramifications in terms of the funding? I know the report indicated, well, we moved those programs into the existing high schools. That's easier said than done. That creates all kinds of transportation issues and very serious fiscal issues. What would be no one's talking about closing Memorial High School. Of the three high schools, it's the newest school was built and opened in 1960, and I was a freshman there. It was a beautiful new school. We have Central, the classical building that was built in the 1890s. We need to look at a cost estimate. This was talked about a few years ago, of maybe closing the classical building. We need to get our hands around some costs for that. What would it cost to close the classical building? What would it cost and what would be the logistics of closing Central High School or West High School? Now, the reality is, anybody who's lived in this city long enough remembers the war that happened when they tried to close Catholic Medical Center. It was a war of the east side versus the west side. It's the river. It's the river, ladies and gentlemen. But it's more than that. Look at healthcare, how it's exploded. We could not have survived with one hospital. Thank God that didn't happen. Would the west side tolerate, or any of the aldermen on the west side, tolerate not having a school on the west side. I'm not sure they would, but we need to get the costs associated. I am not advocating for that. I'm not advocating for closing Central High School. I may advocate for closing the classical building, and if we get some more information about MST, maybe not offering a high school there anymore, going back to what its original intention was, a CTE school. But those are the discussions we have to have starting now. And by the way, when we get to that point, when the decision about the high schools, and the aldermen are expressing this interest in getting more involved in creating our department, which would, in my view, not change much of anything, and then maybe they need to put their 2 cents and say, which schools would they recommend to be closed? And let them respond to their constituents if we and when we get to that point. I hope we don't. I hope we can find another path, and one of the paths might be funding the school district at a level that meets the needs of our students in this city. And I'll close my comments on this because you'll hear more from me about the same things on Monday. You know, I was very involved in one of the founders of Manchester Proud. And Arthur Sullivan and I initiated that initiative. Arthur Sullivan, Brady Sullivan Properties are the largest taxpayers in the city of Manchester, the largest taxpayers. And Arthur approached me at a mental health dinner one year and he said, Bob, we need to talk. I almost lost one of my top companies in the mill yard that I'm leasing to. And when I went down to meet with them, their concerns were about the schools. The people they were trying to hire were reluctant to come to Manchester because of the schools. He said, I'm concerned, and I don't want to, I probably won't say too much about the conversation. He was so concerned that he said, we need to get together and talk about what we can do to highlight the importance of the Manchester public schools. Out of that grew Manchester Proud. And we literally went from business to business. And by the way, Arthur did most of that work, as did Ellie Cochran. They did most of that. I attended some meetings, going to Waste Management and other companies, raised millions of dollars to get input from the business community about moving our schools forward and hoping we never be back in the situation that we're back in today. We're back in that situation that we had. Our school district, ladies and gentlemen listening, we are moving in the right direction. Maybe not as fast as any of us would like, but we're moving in the right direction. We have a fiscal cliff we're going to fall off next year, and we have to be prepared to meet that challenge. And it's going to take everyone in this community coming together, starting with the elections this fall, and I'm not advocating for or against anybody, but we need people that support public education in our city. We can have disagreements about that. I respect it, but we're in a fiscal situation. Just with that fiscal situation, we have to find a way out of it. And that'll conclude my remarks. Committeeman O'Connell.
So I'll just warn you, I'm not going to do the complete expose, but there are a couple of things I'll try and be as brief as I can. I agree with everything that Committeeman Chairman Baines has said. I think a couple of things are important. It is, and you said this at the last meeting, it is entirely self-made. There is no reason for this. None. As I told the mayor, there's been no typhoon or hurricane. We had no volcano, no natural disaster, no massive downturn in the economy, nothing. This is a group of people, and I will go places not as far as I would like to go, but people get elected and there are consequences. And people who are elected who do not like our schools, who work hard a lot of the time to close them down, they'd like to see all our schools closed. And don't be fooled by anything. They're up in Concord with their yellow scarves looking for ways to defund public education. Well, some of them serve in public office in Manchester. And where I disagree with the mayor is the mayor would like to portray what he has done in 15 months as the middle road. I'm the reasonable player. I'm taking the middle road to try and satisfy two conflicting views. Well, the two conflicting views are aldermen who want to take the entire $31 million and take it all away in one fell swoop and could care less what happens to the children as a result. And I'm not saying that, they've said it. So on one side, you have a small group of people who represent, I hope, a very small part of our community, but they have a huge number of percentage votes on the Board of Mayor and Aldermen who represent the total antithesis to education generally anyway. They demonstrate that often, but public education. So you're taking that as one side of the lever, and on the other side you're saying, and then we have these people on the school board who want to just fund the school districts in real terms in the same amount of money as we got last year. What we've asked for each year is just the cost of inflation, not a single dime more. And yet, the mayor says, I'm going to balance these two things. So last year, he gave us $1 million. The taxpayers contributed $1 million. It gets fudged with money coming in and out and up and down based on revenues from mostly state, sometimes federal government. But the taxpayers of Manchester paid $1 million extra last year on a budget of $235 million. You didn't all have to go to the best math classes in the world to know that that's less than 0.5%. The taxpayers were asked last year to pay almost 4% increase in your property taxes. The people who say to me about taxes and what they cost and what they are, if you've got a gross number and over half the budget only went up by 0.5%, in order for the taxpayers to be paying 4%, that means the city side spent 8% increase in 1 year. It galls me, Mr. Chairman, to sit in this chamber listening to people talking about we need to control the school board and its fiscal management and what it's managing, when on the other side of the house, they're profligate in their spending. By the way, let me just say, I don't want to be too defensive about this, but our police and fire and other members of our public servants in the city of Manchester need the increase that they got because it was demonstrated they weren't getting paid adequately. But what so I just want to go after that fact. The second fact is, after the budgets of the last 2 years, what the taxpayers of Manchester need to know is that they have been asked to pay less than 1.5% increase per year for school district for the last 6 years, back to 2020. That's how we get to where we are. Last year, they gave us $1 million, the taxpayers paid $1 million extra for all of these schools and all of these children. There was the increase in utilities, oil, gas, and electric was $970,000. So the increase the taxpayers gave us last year for all our schools and our increasing challenges and growing number of children with difficulty paid the electricity bill. And then we had to find the money to pay teachers and staff, which is 70% of our costs, the increase they needed just so they're not getting in cars and U-Hauls and driving down the street to go someplace else because they can't afford to live and work in Manchester. I find it appalling to have to listen to people. I don't want to get. It is awful to listen to people telling, basically being disingenuous. In 2 budgets, the current administration has asked the taxpayers to pay $17 million less than what they would have paid under a 5.6 or a 4.27 increase, the actual cost of increase. So it's important that our taxpayers realize that you can't, given current inflation rates over recent years, to be only increasing the school budget by 1.5% is the bargain of the century. So I reject the false premise that I'm being a reasonable person, or let's not bring it about the mayor just, but the Board of Mayor and Aldermen more generally, that they're trying to find compromise. When one side is uninterested in compromising, there are things you don't compromise on. So I find it very disheartening after my years on this board to be looking at those numbers and the progress that has been made in this district and all the wonderful people that I see here tonight, the people who work in our district, and this is the way they're disrespect with the way in which they're being treated. But mostly, I feel for the students in our classrooms. And I could go on, I'll finish here, but we could go on and on and on about the deficits in our school district. We talk about, I'll use one example. We talk about social workers, right? So we have, our ratio of students to social workers it should be a national disgrace. And it's a stain on the city of Manchester that we have the needs that we have. We have schools with 11 and 1,400 kids in them, and 800 kids in them, and 600 kids in them with one social worker. We have social workers driving between schools. And if you look at the national recommendation, it's totally intolerable. So it is awful. When I joined this board, Your Honour, Mr. Chairman, 5.5 years ago, the cleaners in our schools were getting paid $9.10 an hour to clean bathrooms. As I've often said, often the least amongst us. Most of them happen to be women. A lot of them happen to be people who are minority communities, the unheard, the unlistened to. $9.10 an hour. And we had aldermanic boards in this city refusing to fund the school system. I'm delighted we've gotten to $15 an hour. I don't know why we're not at 20. So I don't want to be angry. I'm not an angry person. I'm going to work very hard with my colleagues on this board to find a way through this with the minimum impact. But it is frustrating that it's self-inflicted. There is no reason for it other than an animus on behalf of some of our public representatives towards the entire enterprise. They don't like it, they don't want it, they don't support it. And lastly, my friend Mr. Potter made this point at the meeting on Monday night and did it well. You know, having come to this board or come before the public with a single idea, not a single recommendation, not one word from the mayor or the people who voted against our budget, not a single word about what school you should close, what you ought to do differently, how you might save some money. Nothing to say. No praise to give, no criticism to offer. A blank sheet. I support taking $100 million of taxpayers' money in New Hampshire and giving it away in voucher systems to the rich. I support closing public high schools. That's what I have, but I have nothing to say. So I offer myself as a reasonable person, but I have no answer for you, the taxpayers, about how you keep Central, West, Jewett, Highland Goss Falls, or any other school open or pay your staff. So people, ultimately, we put our hands in democracy and in the faith in the public, that they listen, that they pay attention, that they care, and that this generation too will do the right thing. So sorry to proselytize, but these are, when you are people like, and I think everybody on this board who puts their efforts and time and energy and dedication to moving the ball forward, it's so frustrating to be faced with this reality. Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, and the only reason I brought this up tonight is that we're going to have to drive this bus in terms of meeting that fiscal cliff that we have going into next year, and we need to get data, however we get it, and start working through this process to put those alternatives out there. And a lot of the public may not see this or understand it, but we can't go into those rainy day funds again. I don't see how you can do it. Again, it's not, if we do it, it's not going to affect a lot of us on this board. You know, I don't have any, they call it skin in the game. I don't have any more grandchildren going to our schools. I have 2 little grandchildren. They're in a different community now. I came back to serve and try to be a reasonable voice, not a controversial voice, because I thought the school district was moving in the right direction. I really had confidence in it. I said, finally, we're seeing progress and moving, and we brought Manchester Proud into it. We did strategic planning. We listened to the community, and millions of dollars was donated by the business community and foundations who wanted better schools in Manchester, and that's not aligned with what happened during this budget process. And to me, it's sad, because I said the other night, process is more important than speed. Process needed to be slowed down, have a thoughtful dialogue, sitting one-on-one with our aldermen in the same place, and counteracting or agreeing or disagreeing in a respectful manner, not when you're speaking and no one is there to counteract. No one counteracted anything they said, which is very frustrating. Anybody else want to? Commitment Turner.
I think Madam Sol is up first.
I just would like to thank you for giving us this information and hope that when we meet on Monday night, and for those in the community who do not know, this board has a special meeting on Monday night to review the budget and what recommended cuts are and the impact. And I would encourage the community to listen, because it's not just the figures, it's the impacts on our students this year and next year and in the future. And I think we need to make sure that the public understands all of this information. And I'm not sure right now, they understand that we have a major issue, but I don't think they understand the ramifications down the road of this. And I would truly encourage everyone to listen on Monday night to get this information. I think it's crucial that people listen and that we continue to let the public have a better understanding of just where we are and how much it's going to impact our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Baines. I'm thoroughly depressed after this 20-minute discussion, but I will wrap it up by saying that my kids, I do have skin in the game. I have 3 kids in the district, and my son's graduating from Central in about a month, and looking at Karen's document of the history of our trust funds, he entered kindergarten at Webster in 2012, and he has been a very successful student, and I just wanted to lift up our students and our educators in this district. They have ridden this roller coaster for years, and it's a testament to their willingness to dig in, buckle up, and they are here. They could leave this district through that whole history of your trust fund chart. You know, we're under $1 million. We have $31 million. And so I want to say thank you to our educators and our students in this district for knowing that the tides change, sometimes for the better and currently not so much. And my son and his classmates are celebrating their accomplishments. And there's like a Decisions 2025 page on Instagram that they're proudly wearing their Decisions shirts and, you know, and celebrating what they've done despite the ups and downs. So the other night at the BMA, I said that I was fighting for a better budget, and I wanted our students to come back to the aldermanic chambers to say thank you for this budget. We're successful or more successful because of this budget, not in spite of the budget. Unfortunately, I feel like they will, hopefully they'll be running for alderman when they turn 18, and they will be voting on a better budget for our teachers, our students, and our staff. And I also want to say that, you know, I was taking a walk today and I ran into someone that has like a kindergartner, and they pay attention and they're nervous. And I want to tell them that our teachers are fighters, and they are here, whether sun or rain. They are going to be committed to our students, committed to professional development, committed to showing up. I mean, even last night in Teaching and Learning, we explored a document where teachers, you know, the last day of school comes and they're either teaching summer school, going to professional development. Right as soon as school gets out, they're signed up for professional development, and they're growing themselves so that they can extend that to their students. So I have struggled. I've shown up to the BMAs. I've said my piece. I have struggled with where we are, but I can sit here confidently knowing, I mean, I have a sophomore and a 6th grader, and we're not going anywhere. So I will ride this storm out with everyone. I will, somebody said, turn over every single stone to look for every single penny. But if you're concerned about our budget, you should be, and I hope that you don't give up on our district, because I know that there are good things in spite of the budget that we've been handed. So I just wanted to end on a somewhat silver lining, that great things are happening in our district in spite of where we are. Thank you.
Committeeman Potter?
Move to approve.
Second.
What's that?
Move to approve the financial reports.